Hello, I'm Greg Twigg. I'll be walking you through some history with our animation class. Today we're going to start off by looking at toys that were around way before filmmaking and animation, but they were the spark and the inspiration, the inventions that led to more breakthrough moments leading to filmmaking and animation. What you're going to see here today is that there are some toys that maybe you've seen before, maybe you haven't, but you're going to definitely identify what those first sparks of movement and magic, the illusion that was a huge factor in animation and those first steps. I have a toy. This is called the Praxinoscope. And this is one of those that we'll be looking at today. And you can see right there, it's just still images, different sequences of the horse, but with right motion, there it is. It's coming to life. How cool is that? So it's movement. It's movement, and but it's not. It's still images. How does it become movement? This is due to a phenomenon known as the persistence of vision. The persistence of vision is this concept, and well-known concept, about how light and images that our eyes are absorbing, they hang on to that light and that image, the colors, the contrast and whatnot, for just a split second, and then allow you to go on to the next film. And they sort of bleed together a little bit. This was first observed like 60 BC by a not really, I don't know what, even then, I guess they were scientists, someone who just studied a lot, philosopher and whatnot, even a poet, noticing that on a potter's wheel, different colors spinning at a fast speed would bleed into each other. And then the ideas of like, well, what if there were different markings and those things would bleed to each other? Well, this has been something obviously around and observed for a long time in our human culture. However, the first time that any of this was brought to our life, if we look at this timeline I put together for you, wasn't until the 1600s. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is the magic lantern. This was first invented and demonstrated, I guess, in 1650. So that's a century and a half. Century and a half? No, that's more than that. A millennium and a half of time before someone actually started to put some new application to something that everyone has known about. Now, this timeline is really interesting. So in 1650, the magic lantern is brought to the world, and it wasn't for another almost 200 years in 1827 when the thaumatrope was invented and demonstrated and then distributed publicly. The thaumatrope is a really neat toy. We're going to look at that one after the magic lantern. So this kind of cluster of invention happens right around then. The thaumatrope comes out, and then 5 years later in 1832, the phenakistoscope. That's a really tough one. Phenakistoscope is invented by Joseph Plateau. This is now an advance. People were amazed by the thaumatrope in 1827. Everyone wanted one. So Plateau is like, wow, this is a really cool idea. I understand how it works. What if I can make it better? And this is the seed that I want you guys to think about through all of the history that we look at in this class. Each step leads to another. Each invention leads to another. Each idea leads to another. Someone did something, someone sees it, and what they want is to make it better, bigger, longer. So Plateau comes up with the phenakistoscope. I think I got it. And now it's a spinning wheel with a little more elaborate designs, more motion. Still not perfect. You have to look at it in a mirror through the little slots, and you get to see the illusion of movement. And then just 1 year later, Simon Stamper, goes, well, the phenakistoscope is cool, but I think I can make it better and bigger. And so the zoetrope comes along in 1832. So it's like boom, boom, boom. And that's a really cool thing to think about, is this idea of invention, observation, reaction, and then reinvention. Animation is purely reinvention over and over again. I love that. People are going crazy about that. I want it. I can do it bigger and better, right? That's the human nature. It's like, it's great, but it also, I don't know, seems a little greedy. So continuing with this timeline, it's not for, those dates are incorrect. I mean, the dates are right. My placement in the timeline is totally incorrect. Oh, that's going to kill me. I'll fix it and I'll post it and you can then look at it. Because it's not for another 50 years. No, 40 years. See, now it's screwing me up. I'm looking at it and now I'm having to do math. So it's not for another 44 years before someone advances what the zoetrope was doing. And that is with Emile Reynaud from France, who invented the praxinoscope. And the praxinoscope is that one I was just showing you. And it's it allows you to use a mirror system, and instead of the slots, you can still use this little slot thing here. But that little motion here, I can actually get up the camera. So you're kind of now thinking about a frame. That's cool. Invention and reinvention, and that is what is freaking awesome about our world here. Now I want you to watch a few of these videos that demonstrate the history, talk about it a little bit, and we will rock with that.
Hello, I'm Kristen Gallernow. I'm the Curator of Communications and Information Technology at the Henry Ford, and I want to share this device with you. It's called a magic lantern, and it allowed people to experience movie-like entertainment hundreds of years before the cinema or even photography existed. In the 1650s, a Dutch astronomer, mathematician, and physicist named Christian Huygens projected images using an optical lens and candlelight. The effect must have seemed like magic. Although Huygens didn't come up with the term magic lantern, he's usually credited with its invention. By the 18th century, magic lanterns were hugely popular in the entertainment world, and lanternists used slides like these to narrate their stories. At first, the images were static, like a single frame of film. There are hand-painted images from classic stories, exotic landscapes, and supernatural creatures that appeared in magic shows called phantasmagorias. Projectionists began to use special effects that we take for granted in movies today, like dissolving views. The slides also became animated. These mechanical slides have multiple layers of rotating glass discs and lever mechanisms that created motion in a single slide. This creature appears to be tormenting a human, and these ocean waves move. This special slide, called a chromatrope, creates beautiful abstract patterns like a kaleidoscope. While the magic lantern may seem very low-tech to us today, it actually contains many layers of creative and material innovation. New illumination sources like limelight and eventually electricity meant that projections became brighter and larger. Audiences grew too, filling large theaters where lanternists used stage technology to make their shows even more dramatic, even projecting onto smoke. Despite their popularity, the magic lantern eventually ended up shrinking down in audience size, but this time into the home. Magic lantern sets like this could be purchased from catalogs, and sometimes they were even given to children as Christmas gifts. But eventually the lantern could no longer compete with the wonders of the cinema. The author Charles Dickens experienced the magic lantern, and he was very excited by the way it seemed to mimic the human imagination, those sorts of mental images that we get, and the fuzzy edges of human memory. One of the most popular slide sets ever created for the magic lantern was of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. We're excited to present a magic lantern interpretation at holiday nights. We hope you'll join us.
Here's a really cool toy with a fancy name, Thaumatrope. It's probably the granddaddy of motion picture and animation, believe it or not. It's like the basic atom of animation from which everything else is built on. Of course, it's just an optical illusion which makes use of the theory of persistence of vision. I made this Thaumatrope myself, but the original ones date back as early as the 1820s, years before the classic zoetrope.
Inspired by Faraday's wheel, Joseph Plateau in Brussels and Simon Stampfer in Vienna invent the phenakistoscope independently of one another in 1832. Stampfer called it the stroboscope. In England, it was known as the phantoscope. This disc demonstrates continuous movement for the first time. Comparable to film because it uses minimal differences between the images to create the illusion of movement. In 1833, Horner invented the Daedaleum, later called the zoetrope or wheel of life. Here, the phases of movement are also seen in the form of an infinite loop through the slits. We see an image, then no image, and then a slightly different second image, producing the illusion of movement in the mind of the viewer. In 1877, Émile Reynaud built his praxinoscope. We see the images in the mirrors. The function of the dark phase between the slits is taken over by the angle at which the mirrors are set up.
This device or toy was unique because you had all those different carousel slides or elements that you could piece in there. Instead of having to buy one toy that only had one thing on it, now you could start to go through different scenes like this girl playing. I am going to pause this real quick. We are now seeing these devices through their inventors' eyes and craft. You're seeing that life happen. It's the illusion, that persistence of vision that allows us to capture motion in our eyes and our brains. Super great. So those sum up the toys. However, I want to take a look at two other films that are tributes, basically, to two of these toys. One of them is a tribute to the phenakistoscope. Phenakistoscope. I did it. Practice that one. Try to say it 5 times real fast. And that's the tribute to Joseph Plateau. And then the second one we're looking at is today's interpretation of the zoetrope and how and how 3D design has played a role in tapping into a really old idea but using new technology. These are going to be pretty cool, and I hope that they will be inspiring as well.
This is a zoetrope. It takes inanimate objects, like these tiny frogs, and propels them into motion. But these updated 3D versions require an intense level of planning, meticulously creating a bunch of hand-painted figures and controlling light in a way that's imperceptible. These little machines are made by Kevin Holmes. He knows all the secrets to making them look so mesmerizing. And everything starts with these tiny 3D sculptures. Each is 3D printed and painted by hand. And all their motions are mapped out using animation software. That animation mapping helps Kevin know exactly where each piece needs to be placed on the carousel. The carousel is what will spin later on. helping all the pieces come to life. Kevin's systems use 3D objects, but zoetropes with 2D images have actually been around for a long time.
3D zoetropes are a modern spin on a Victorian toy.
They were built as early as the 1830s and sold as toys by 1867. These ones had images pasted around the inside of a cylinder. When viewers spun the cylinder and looked through tiny openings, those images danced around before their eyes. Kevin's zoetropes are a bit more complex.
It's real-time stop motion with 3D printed figures and strobe lights.
Getting the strobe lighting right is the most important part of this entire operation.
The strobes are timed so that each animation segment replaces the previous segment as the carousel rotates.
Each segment has a character in a slightly different position, and the light illuminates the carousel only when the characters reach a new position.
So the strobes show your eyes just the sequence and not the blurry bits in between.
To keep up with the carousel, the light flashes 20 times per rotation. Each flash lasts only about a half a millisecond, but it leaves a lasting impression on your retina. And because our eyes retain that image for a split second after it disappears, we end up seeing continuous, lifelike movement. Kevin's first zoetropes weren't as complex as the ones he builds now. And he says the trick to his machines is that the motions, or animations, are longer than the carousel's loop. That means you have to watch the loop more than once to catch everything. Starting way back when the baby fish comes out of the clam, all the way until it reaches the front. While Kevin fully assembles a lot of these zoetropes, he's also crowdfunding DIY kits.
I started with the idea of selling machine kits because I'm not an artist, and it's the potential of the machine itself that really excites me.
He provides video tutorials so people can learn how to build everything from scratch. This way, you can build your own systems and create your very own animations.
Okay, didn't quite catch the pause in time. Really neat, right? That last one brings just current technology today, not just computer modeling, but 3D printing, quite outstanding. And I love that moment when he's like, I'm not an artist, so I need to use, I'm like, wait a minute, what I'm seeing is really wonderful art. So I should write him a letter and let him know. This concludes our little run with toys that led up to animation, and obviously you can tell. Yeah, this was making some serious sparks happen in some really creative minds that led us to the next phase, and we're gonna look at that in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody, and hope you are enjoying this so far.